I think the governor's executive order was right on time. Illinois continues to fail at passing a truly balanced budget year after year when we've seen, a $55 billion budget this fiscal year, the highest in the state's history. We know that the truth is that budget cuts need to happen.
It's Regan Deering, a Republican state representative from Decatur, joining another Republican, Amy Ellick from Alton, late last week, criticizing Governor J.B. Pritzker's handling of your tax dollars in the annual budget. This is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning here with The Center Square. Get headlines in your inbox by going to thecentersquare.com, clicking newsletter, and registering. It's free. We're a free newswire service, and you can also donate to us at thecentersquare.com. But you can wake up with us here each and every weekday morning, back after a week off. Greatly appreciate you guys and your patience and coming back and checking us out as we go back live to cover what's going on in the land of Lincoln. So if you have followed the Center Square and you've watched this show, you recall that sometime last month, Governor J.B. Pritzker issued an executive order. But the executive order saying we need to find budget cuts, blaming the Trump administration for those needs for budget cuts. The day before that, the Center Square's investigative team published a report about how much spending has increased in the state of Illinois under Governor J.B. Pritzker. 40+%, $16 billion since 2019, and we're spending a record amount of money. Legislature passed some tax increases in May to fund the budget that started July 1st, rather. So the calendar year for the budget year for Illinois is not the calendar year. It starts July 1st. That's why at the end of May, it's always a mad dash to get that budget completed before May 31st. But regardless, budget, highest spending plan in state history, includes tax increases and a whole host of other things. You've got Republicans who were critical then and now, even after weeks of the governor having this executive order saying, hey, state agencies, because of the Trump administration, we need to cut the budget. They really haven't seen much when it comes to transparency on how that executive order is being implemented. Here is Amy Ellick.
A month ago, Governor Pritzker signed Executive Order 2025-05, which directed his agencies to identify immediate spending reductions in an effort to blame Trump for his agency's overspending. As a CPA and spokesperson for the General Services Appropriations Committee, I was very much looking forward to seeing where Governor Pritzker's agencies identified inefficiencies and excessive spending, and hoped that maybe this executive order would create a slightly more efficient government. That proved to be wishful thinking. We're not getting any information whatsoever from agencies about where they plan to cut. Because we had not heard any results from this executive order.
And you've got Ellick saying that transparency is needed.
Illinoisans deserve transparency and accountability. Their government should be transparent about the work they are doing for them, not hiding behind political theater and press releases. House Republicans' message is simple: respect taxpayers and live within our means. It's time for Governor Pritzker to stop using his office to campaign for president and get our house in order.
Regan Deering, the Republican from Decatur, joining Ellick in this news conference late last week, saying that the budget cuts need to happen. Illinoisans can't afford Illinois government spending at the levels it continues to increase spending.
Instead of eyeing a bid for higher office, Governor Pritzker needs to do the job he was elected to do here in Illinois. We're ranked at the top of almost every tax list that's published. In March, a Wallet Hub study reported that Illinoisans pay the highest combined taxes of any other state in the nation, coming to more than 16.5% of our incomes spent on taxes annually. And for what? To fund shortfalls in Chicago, pay raises for legislators, to give illegal aliens top-of-the-line benefits. It's simply shameful that our governor gets away with smoke and mirror tactics, dangling executive orders like this in the face of Illinoisans and then taking it back when he knows he can't deliver. The people of Illinois who haven't left or been pushed out are fed up, and so am I. We can do better, we can do more, and we can do right by the people of Illinois. Simply put, enough is enough.
Now, Governor J.B. Pritzker late last week asked about the government shutdown, SNAP being reinstituted after the government reopened, with Senator Dick Durbin voting to reopen the government, joining several other Democrats breaking away from the party in the U.S. Senate to reopen the federal government. And Pritzker, obviously says he disagreed with the senior senator from Illinois, but he also took an opportunity to criticize the Trump administration.
Well, we're up, this is all moved fairly quickly, so we're all moving as quickly as we can at the state level, knowing that funds will flow or are flowing. And then, we had to make major adjustments in SNAP to try to meet the various levels of SNAP funding allowed by the courts. Right, originally it was 0, went to 50%, 65%, back to 50%, though some people weren't going to get any at all. Now we're back to 100%. So we're working as fast as we can to make sure that people have their SNAP cards charged and ready to go.
And then the governor was asked about politics and the Trump administration. And you listen to these responses in the context of what you heard some of the Republicans from the state house saying, criticizing the governor for trying to run for president in 2028.
Well, when Donald Trump doesn't want to give people health care and is willing to take away people's food in order to force people to take less health care or pay higher premiums, that's going to cause Democrats and Republicans apparently not to be able to get along and not to be able to get the things that average Americans want. What I am so upset about is that Donald Trump was fine with people not being able to travel, people not being able to get their food. He was fine, he is fine with taking away health care from people. And yeah, if you want to see division in a country, stop feeding people, stop giving them health care. And so it's Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans that have done this to this country. I'm hopeful that there will be reasonable minds that will come together and that we will be able to move past January, the end of January, which is now when the CR goes to, and not have to have any more shutdowns. But this is on Donald Trump. Remember, MAGA Republicans control the House, the Senate, the presidency, and the Supreme Court. So who's in charge? It's the Republicans. When things aren't going well in this country, it's the people in charge that you ought to look to, and it's Donald Trump that's leading them.
But what about things in Illinois, right? I mean, if Illinois is bringing in record revenues, are they able to spend those properly, or are they going to have to find budget cuts, for instance? Again, back to State Representative Regan Deering noting that the governor announcing budget cuts, even though they haven't seen any transparent examples of how that's being done within state agencies after the executive order was signed, they say it's an indication that the budget's not balanced.
I think the governor's executive order was right on time. Illinois continues to fail at passing a truly balanced budget year after year. When we've seen, a $55 billion budget this fiscal year, the highest in the state's history, we know that the truth is that budget cuts need to happen, and they need to happen in real time and all the time. We're seeing federal dollars that are no longer going to flow to Illinois based on some of our policy choices. And so as a state, we're going to need to build up those rainy day funds, those backup plans for when we are going to have to fill in some of those gaps. So I think that that's a process that we're asking our families and our taxpayers to do all year long as well. So certainly when we as a governing body are managing taxpayers' money, there's always an opportunity to look for cuts.
And you've got, again, the back and forth here, right, about the government shutdown. And could we see another one come sometime in January with the federal government, right? And how that could impact the state of Illinois, let alone the state of Illinois having policies that don't conform with the Trump administration's policies. And that could lead to a loss of federal funding coming to Illinois, federal tax dollars, your tax dollars coming back to the state of Illinois. But Pritzker blaming it on Republicans when, again, in the U.S. Senate, they needed that 60 vote threshold to be met, which required some Democrats to come on board with Republicans. And Trump was talking about how he wanted to end the filibuster. And you can obviously track that at thecentersquare.com with stories. But one thing that happened during fall veto session, which we covered here, and you woke up with us every weekday morning after fall veto session to get the latest of what was going on at the Illinois State House here with Illinois in Focus. But one thing they did do is they decoupled the state tax code
this is
from
all
the
moved
federal tax code, right? And what that means is the tax credits and things that manufacturers can get under the federal tax code for losses or depreciation, things like that. It's not going to match up with the state's policies on those are not going to match up with the federal policies. And that's led some concern that's going to mean Illinois is going to be less competitive. Here's State Representative Regan Deering and Amy Ellick talking about that prospect.
Here, anytime we decouple, we become an outlier. We become the state that is immediately known for not being friendly to business, and we can just expect that companies will be looking elsewhere. It frankly happens already in Illinois, and we just unfortunately keep giving businesses reason to invest elsewhere.
Yeah, I would simply add on, Illinois' taxing levels are so high already. I think we're the third highest corporate tax in the nation. And so, while Democrats are making us an outlier, as Representative Ellick said, it just feels like one more fight they're picking against the Trump administration instead of prioritizing our families and our small businesses here. Large manufacturers are, of course, going to see raises. And overall, I think we're looking at $200 million plus that will be put on the backs of our Illinois families and businesses.
So if there are alders that want to put up on the board to raise the property taxes, and they're going to have to go out and find 26 votes to do that. And even if they find 26 votes, I'm vetoing it.
It's Mayor Brandon Johnson in Chicago talking about how he's going to veto any budget that the city council approves that includes property tax increases. This, as the mayor is looking to increase a whole host of taxes, including a head tax, which would possibly cost some businesses tens of thousands of dollars extra a year, if not more. So what's going to happen in the city of Chicago as they get closer to that end of year deadline to pass a budget with the prospects of $1 billion+ of debts that they're going to go into the next year with? Well, it could be more tax increases. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. You can go to thecentersquare.com. Check out the headline from the Center Square's Jim Talamonte. Chicago Council Committee rejects mayor's proposed tax hikes. And we'll go through this with you here. And of course, you can read it for yourself and get it in your inbox by going to thecentersquare.com and sign up for the newsletter. So the Chicago City Council Committee on Finance rejecting a package of higher taxes proposed by Mayor Brandon Johnson. After the committee voted 25-10 against Johnson's revenue package Monday afternoon, the mayor refused to back down from his proposed corporate head tax. And you can read some of the comments there. Mayor Johnson, he went in front of the press and talked about a whole host of things, and including asked questions by the press, and he apparently is dodging, at least according to one reporter's perspective here.
So just to be clear, you are not backing down on the head tax whatsoever. It's going to be in your budget.
I'm not backing down in protecting working people. Right, that's the
well,
part.
That's kind of dodging the question. If you
no, it's not.
Well, are you? Is the head tax going to stay in your budget?
I just said though, Greg. I just said that we're not. I'm going to veto a budget that increases property taxes, and I'm challenging those with the means, these large corporations, to pay their fair share in taxes. This community safety charge does just that.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
So again, you heard the mayor there taking a question from a reporter about whether or not he's going to continue to support the head tax. What does the head tax do? Well, the mayor's plan would impose a $21 per worker monthly tax on businesses with 100 employees or more, although there have been discussions about some workers being exempted. A business with exactly 100 employees would pay $2,100 a month, or $25,200 annually. So you can see how that would add up real quick for businesses in Chicago. Some have said, listen, something like that is going to cause businesses to flee the city of Chicago. And some pointing that businesses are already fleeing Chicago with a whole host of concerns, from high property taxes, high crime in some areas. Johnson being asked about what's driving businesses.
People aren't coming downtown. Property values go down. Doesn't that hurt homeowners in Englewood and in Austin even further, as the Pappas's report seemed to indicate?
Well, look, I try not to live in hypothetical. I'm a Bears fan, so I try to live in like real practical terms. Here's what I believe folks are missing who have that particular vantage point. The reason why, first of all, the vacancy exists is because obviously we're still recovering from the pandemic. There is no correlation between taxation and the success, if you will, of corporations.
And I just want to pause there for a moment. He says they're still recovering from the pandemic as to why their business hasn't bounced back as fast. And Illinois, for some reason, lags the rest of the country when it comes to rebounding from economic downturns. And we can go back to in the 2007-2008 housing crisis. It took Illinois more than a decade to bounce back. After COVID, we have gotten to the point pre-COVID, but again, it took Illinois longer to get to economic levels than the rest of the country after the pandemic and the government-imposed shutdowns and so on. So Johnson's saying they're still recovering from the pandemic. That's why there's empty storefronts. Just it's interesting to hear that perspective, especially now in 2025, the tail end, when the pandemic was, 2020, 2021 in Illinois. Governor Pritzker had executive orders and emergency declarations keeping the pandemic enforcement of, certain types of business restrictions for like 2.5 years. So after that, it was, everything's open, everything's ready to go. So here we are again, late 2025. Are we really still recovering from the pandemic? Again, back to the mayor.
We do know, though, is there is a correlation between safety and population and businesses. This is about ensuring that we do the work that strengthens our city as a much safer place to live and do business. Keep in mind, this community safety surcharge is going to go towards the area that everybody knows is the most important thing, which is to ensure that we're driving violence down on the city of Chicago. There's more evidence of community safety driving business and people out than any of the speculations that they're making.
So again, it seems to be just completely dismissing economists who point to, listen, if you've got high taxes in one area and low taxes in another area, the businesses are going to invest in the places where they've got lower taxes. And that's going to mean more jobs for that area. That's going to mean more tax revenue from those jobs for government services, as opposed to an area and a jurisdiction, even if it is a large hub like Chicago with higher taxes and a whole host of other issues, including funding governments that can't live within its means, like the city of Chicago, looking at $16.6 billion, I believe, in a budget for next year, and they're estimating a $1.5 billion deficit for that budget. So where's the cuts going to come from? And again, the mayor talking about a head tax, and here he is discussing the position that he has and the posture that he has versus others taking different positions about the head tax.
I want to make something again absolutely clear. This budget is meant and designed to protect the working people of this great city. And I will use every single tool available to me and stand by our power to ensure that working families no longer have to bear the burden of a budget being balanced off of their backs. Thank you.
Right,
so the mayor taking some questions and asked about the other taxes he has, right? The head tax, and he says that's to help take the burden off of working families. You've got a streaming services tax and a whole host of other things. More from the mayor's Q&A with members of the press yesterday.
The personal property lease tax / the cloud tax.
Yeah.
There are a lot of small business folks who say that's a tax on working people. That's going to sock working people. Small business owners leasing property, leasing cloud computing software. Would you consider amending that proposal?
I have not heard working people say that to me. Who are you talking to?
I've talked to a couple business owners and some aldermen that have called out that PPLT in the cloud tax.
I have not heard. First of all, it doesn't affect working people the way in which it's being described. We're talking about an industry that's making more money than they even imagine. So I would, if next time you talk to those auditors, tell them to text me and we can have a conversation about it.
The conversation, though, in the committee that rejected the mayor's tax proposals seem to be, no, they don't support these ideas. And you've got more taxes being discussed and what they're going to possibly do in the city of Chicago if they don't get these tax increases.
Here's what I do know. It's property taxes, garbage fees, grocery taxes, or layoffs. Or we can actually protect working people. That's what this budget does.
You said you'd veto any proposal that has a property tax increase. Will you veto any proposal that doesn't have a corporate head tax?
The question is really, can you pass a budget without requiring large corporations to pay their fair share in taxes? I mean, folks will attempt to. I don't know how you do that. In fact, look, just this past weekend, I was on the west side of Chicago where I live. I was at Aspire and Zoe Life Ministries. I'm talking about hundreds of people in line for food and toilet paper. For food and toilet paper. Now, these alders who represent communities like North Lawndale and Inglewood, who saw a 100%, almost 100%, 80% increase in their property taxes, and their families are in lines for food and toilet paper, and you're asking me, should I place a greater burden on them? If that's what the question is, I'm not going to do that. These large corporations have an opportunity to put more skin in the game. We cannot balance this budget off the backs of working and poor people.
So again, the question was, will you veto a budget that does not include the corporate head tax? He said he'd veto a budget that includes the property tax, but what about that corporate head tax? Again, corporate head tax that's possibly going to cost an employer with just 100 employees $25,200 per year. All right. So Johnson said Chicago's elevated numbers of downtown office vacancies, not the result of high taxes. But Reed Smith, a partner at David Dorner, said a head tax is not the way to bring people into Chicago. He told Jim Talamonte with the Center Square that he thinks it's going to keep people out of the city when we want to bring them back in and have people working here, coming downtown, visiting the downtown businesses. You don't want to give them a reason not to come to the office, and that's what the head tax would do. In addition to the corporate head tax, the mayor's $16.6 billion spending plan includes new taxes on social media, sports betting, and boat mooring. Dorner said the mayor's cloud tax or lease tax would affect the lease, rental, or use of computer software or cloud infrastructure. Interesting to note, apparently there's some downages on websites this morning that's caused by a service called Cloudflare. So just kind of interesting. We're talking about that as that's going on as well. But back to the story here. Dorner said increasing the tax to 15% would impact businesses and individuals who pay for software licenses. And he says, as you can imagine, businesses spend a lot on their budget and technology, including software services, that are going to subject that to higher tax. If passed by the city of Chicago, it's already 11%. It's not long ago, it was 9%. So the mayor asked about a whole host of other things and just continued back and forth. But really, when it comes down to it, they've got the clock ticking for them to get the budget proposal on the mayor's desk and approved before it starts January 1st. It's always fascinating. We'll be hearing a lot more about this with Chicago City Council meeting scheduled today, I believe, and the Center Square's Jim Talamonte is going to be on top of that. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson's tax proposals drawing concern over the legality, but also bringing about an economic death spiral. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. And why are we focusing in on Chicago? Well, it's the state's largest city. Supporters say it's an economic driver. Opponents say that it's taking state tax dollars, but they're looking at a new budget year coming up January 1st, and Brandon Johnson wants to spend $16.6 billion, but there's a billion-plus dollar deficit, and how are they going to plug that gap? Is it going to be service cuts and layoffs, or is it going to be tax increases? Now, the mayor yesterday, as we reviewed here with Illinois in Focus Daily, which is live every weekday morning here on the Center Square with YouTube. So like, subscribe, and get that notification bell, and get the podcast where you get podcasts. But Johnson vowed he would veto a budget that included a property tax increase, but he wants tax increases on corporations through a head tax to charge $21 per employee for businesses that have more than 100 employees, and that would be a monthly charge. That adds up really quick. Even if you only have 100 employees, it's like $21,000 a year. So he's looking for that. He's looking for like a streaming services tax and a subscription, type of tax that if you have a bunch of different tools like video editing or content management type things, if you have those types of subscriptions, then you have to pay a tax. But as you'll see the headline at the center square, Chicago tax proposals draw concerns over legality and also the economic death spiral potential. So the Chicago Board of Education member Nora Rios Sierra, she addressed the city council yesterday when they met briefly to talk about how she's concerned they're going to have to lay off some teachers.
You signed a letter that was very generous and very passionately supported Chicago Public Schools. I'm going to quote a few short quotes from this letter, just so you know the impact that this letter made. We were not able to pass within our budget alternates to be able to save us in case this body did not surplus the TIF that we were expecting. We weren't able to do that because this body signed this letter that said they were demanding that the Chicago Board of Education avoid cutting $175 million from schools to pay for the MEABF pension payment. You all were demanding that we not make that payment. You all said we will support a TIP surplus to help balance both the city and CPS budget. We recommend you approve the budget presented by CPS. We demand sensible leadership and stability for our children and workers of Chicago Public Schools. You all demanded that we pass a budget that heavily relied on a historic TIF surplus. You all made some big promises to our Chicago Public Schools. If we do not get that TIF surplus, we're going to be sending a lot of pink slips for Christmas. And we're going to put it right back on you.
So clearly, she's saying that if they don't give tax increment finance fund surpluses to Chicago Public Schools, they're going to have to lay a bunch of Chicago Public School teachers off. That's yesterday's city council meeting. But if you look around and talk to some analysts, as Jim Talamonte did for the Center Square, you will see that there's a lot of pushback. You've got Net Choice Vice President of Government Relations, Amy Boss, saying that certain types of taxes, like the tax that would impose a 50 cents monthly fee per active user for digital services, it would ultimately lead to less competition, less access, higher costs, but also legality and whether or not it's going to end up in court. So you've got Boss saying that some states have had their digital advertising taxes struck down. Others have backed off their proposals, and we'll see what happens with the city of Chicago when it comes to that. But you have others who've warned that, say, the mayor's head tax could lead to an economic death spiral. But you also had some criticism from residents of Chicago brought up. One resident during public comments yesterday sharing some thoughts about the city's priorities.
But when ICE come and start snatching illegals out, now here come the hell raising. Here come the uproar. Then you want the blacks to help fight, be your guard dog. No, that's not going to happen here. Not in 2025, 26, and 27. ICE going to be here as long as Donald Trump is in the White House. That's one thing. Number two, 25 to 10, your budget just got shot down. So what's the next plan? You're already trying to hit everybody else with these property tax that the last time you trying to hit us with a $300 million property tax, that didn't work out very well for you. You see there, you just like a Zomar Madami imitation. That's what you are, Brandon Johnson. You want to play this socialist game. You're not trying to help the blacks to, get on their feet and stuff, and then you lie. You have the media protecting you. You have everybody to shield your shame. It's for God.
So you've got the resident talking more about, the media and different groups of people who are upset about ICE and their enforcement of immigration law, and even getting into the streets. And you've got rhetoric from elected officials saying be street fighters and get in their face and such. Here's that same resident kind of pushing back on that idea.
But when Laken Riley got killed, I didn't hear no Hispanic citizen say nothing about her death. Second of all, if you say that ICE is doing all those terroristic things, then the illegal immigrants need to go back south of the border and then reapply for asylum. Do it the right way, because we are flooded. The resources, finance, everything. But when Lake and Riley got killed, I didn't hear no Hispanic citizen say nothing about her death. When that other girl who got killed and raped at the age of 12 in Houston, I didn't hear nobody say nothing. But when ICE come and start snatching illegals out, now here come the hell raising. Here come the uproar. Then you want the blacks to help be your guard dog. No, that's not going to happen here. Not in 2025, 26, and 27.
So you got the continued pushback from some residents in Chicago. And somebody who's seen that gentleman speak before during public comments in the Chicago City Council meetings. Jessica Johnson, I believe, is this next citizen, resident of Chicago, talking about politics and how she's not going to be cornered into having to believe a certain set of principles that the party in power wants her to believe, she says.
So says the water hose and the dog bites that my mother and father took in Jim Crow, Mississippi. Do you understand that? Do you understand that I am 63 years old and I've been voting since I was 18 years old? I vote the way I want to vote. And so does everybody else in the United States of America. That's what peaceful protest looks like. Not a bunch of weirdos attacking ICE cars and ICE agents having to get tear gas because they're attacking the police. Police attacked us. That's how we got the right to vote. You're going to respect that. And everybody else in this room, we don't have to vote for y'all while y'all sitting around dogging us out, not giving us our money.
Clearly, there's going to be ongoing debates about where that money is going to go.
The glaring issue is the error rate. How it's virtually doubled in 7 or 8 years is a question that I think every taxpayer in the state should be aware of. I think it's important that we all keep an eye on that number to ensure that simply by people being careless.
That is State Senator Don DeWitt during this week's Joint Committee on Administrative Rules hearing, questioning Department of Human Services officials about the state's high error rate in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, federal tax subsidies for food benefits for those who need it the most. And Illinois' error rate has practically doubled in the past 7 or 8 years. What's being done to bring that down? Because if it doesn't come down, it's going to cost Illinois taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning as we break things down for you to understand in the land of Lincoln so you can get on with your day. Listen, I get paid to do this each and every weekday morning. I get paid to watch hours and hours and hours of committee hearings and stay up way into the early morning hours whenever they're in session. So it really truly is a blessing to exercise my First Amendment rights of free speech and free press and get paid for it. So greatly appreciate your support, and you can support the Center Square. Go to thecentersquare.com and donate. But let's get to it. The SNAP error rate, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Now, a couple of things. Obviously, we just got off of a more than 40-day long federal government shutdown. And November 1st, SNAP benefits were frozen because there was no authority to spend the money. There were lawsuits, and there were judges saying you can spend half of it, and the Trump administration pushing back saying we don't have the authority to do any of it. So ultimately, Democrats, few, including Illinois U.S. Senator Dick Durbin, caved and joined some Republicans in voting to reopen the government. Another potential government shutdown could happen in late January. We'll see what happens. But part of all of this, of course, was the SNAP benefits being frozen because of the government shutdown. But even before the government shutdown and those SNAP benefits were frozen, which they have since reopened, you had the Trump administration and Republicans in Congress pass the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. And in that, it dealt with the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program and ensuring states get their error rate down. Now, the error rate for a state's SNAP program includes overpayments and underpayments, though the vast majority of the error rate is overpayments, meaning paying people food benefits that's a level that they don't deserve or they don't deserve at all because of certain eligibility requirements. So the federal government's requiring states to get the SNAP error rate down below 6% or have to spend state tax dollars to cover the cost. There's also new eligibility requirements that were actually in place, from my understanding, before COVID. But then the COVID pandemic, they lifted a bunch of these, and the Trump administration looking to just revert back to requiring people to go to work or to volunteer in order to get food benefits, unless they are, disabled and can't work. So there's certain types of eligibility requirements that are now law that the state of Illinois is going to have to comply with, or again, it's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars. So the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules, a bipartisan committee at the State House that oversees administrative rulemaking. So when a law is passed, the administration and the agencies have to craft the rules that they're going to use to enforce the law. And that's what JCAR's role is to oversee these rules and to have all of it out in the open as best they can. Now, JCAR is an interesting body. They were scheduled for like 11 o'clock, for instance. But they typically don't get into the chamber until like noon, an hour after or so. They have a pre-meeting beforehand, and they talk about all the things they're going to talk about. So it's interesting to see, a very concise and distilled hearing after a pre-hearing that's behind closed doors with staff. But during the public hearing, Republican State Senator Don DeWitt from St. Charles, he talked about SNAP and just some of the numbers that the Pritzker administration's put out there as to who's going to be impacted by eligibility requirements.
First of all, can you tell me the number that the governor is suggesting Illinois residents who he is anticipating are going to be purportedly losing all of their SNAP benefits?
I off the top of my head, I do not have that number, and I don't want to give an incorrect number, but I can definitely share that with you.
Okay.
It is, I will say it is a large amount that could potentially lose their benefits under the new role of the able-bodied adults without dependent rules.
Sure. So has anybody done a calculation as to what percentage of those current SNAP benefactors will be exempted by existing rules and regulations in the state of Illinois?
I don't believe that there is a calculation, to my knowledge, that has been shared with me.
Would you at least acknowledge that there could be a percentage of those recipients who could continue to receive their SNAP benefits given the existing exemptions that appear to be remaining in place?
There is a percentage, and I will say currently what the Department of Human Services is doing is working to make sure that everybody who is eligible for those exemptions is receiving them.
Could you at least acknowledge that there could be a significant number of those people who may very well choose to meet the work requirements?
I don't think that it's my place to speak for those people, whether or not they choose to meet those work requirements.
I'm just asking, do you believe some of them may choose to opt in for the working requirements in order to maintain their SNAP benefits?
It's possible, sure.
So the questions, of course, are about, some of the numbers that the Pritzker administration and the director of the Department of Human Services have put out there, and characterizing Trump and Republican laws that were passed and signed by the federal government to have work requirements. And we've heard numbers of like 300,000 people in Illinois are going to be cut off instantly, and the red flags that the Pritzker administration's raised with large numbers, and the economic impact that they claim it's going to have, and so on. And I believe DeWitt at one point in the JCAR hearing criticized that, saying that the numbers are seemingly inflated by the Pritzker administration, and some could see that as being for a political purpose. But DeWitt focused in on the SNAP error rate. Again, Illinois' error rate practically doubled in about 7 or 8 years.
Numbers that were put out by the USDA comparing 2017, which would have been the last year before the governor came into office, at 5.73%, have now climbed to almost double that number of 11.56%. And again, those are calculations made by the Department of Agriculture. Can you talk a little bit about why has that number doubled over the last 7 or 8 years? It's a very expensive proposition for the state of Illinois if the number stays high, correct? To the tune of about $800 million is the
under the new rules with the cost sharing. I don't know if the whole $800 million is just from the cost sharing for error rate, but it is. And so the department's priority right now is making sure that our rules are updated and clear enough to mitigate those errors as much as possible.
So what exactly is the department going to do when it comes to other aspects of the SNAP program and ensuring that it complies with federal law and it saves Illinois taxpayers from covering the error rate? One thing that the DHS official talked about was, for instance, getting the program in place to track eligibility, looking at the cost of living allocation increases, that making sure that those match up with eligibility, and a variety of other things that she lays out.
That is updated trainings, making sure people have updated trainings. It is increasing our redetermination schedule from yearly to every 6 months. So people will have to renew their benefits every 6 months. It is requiring people to submit proof of housing expenses to make sure that housing expenses are being recorded appropriately and calculated correctly into a person's benefit amount. Those are a couple that I can think of off of the top of my head. There are quite a number of them, but those are some of the biggest ones that we are implementing.
My fear is this entire situation is being not only promoted by DHS, but the numbers are being exaggerated. Every one of these projections that we read about are all worst-case scenarios, with none of the potential adjustments of either exemptions or work requirement acceptance being calculated into this process. The glaring issue is the error rate. How it's virtually doubled in 7 or 8 years is a question that I think every taxpayer in the state should be aware of. I think it's important that we all keep an eye on that number to ensure that simply by people being careless.
And it's going to cost taxpayers a lot of money, $800 million potentially. And there's other cost sharing that the federal government's asking states to step up for and cover, and that includes just implementing the program. But the vast majority of, actually all of the SNAP funding is coming from the federal taxpayers. So when you've got an error rate of 11.5%, I mean, that's like 1 out of every $10 that is an error going out. That's a lot of money. State Representative Ryan Spain, Republican from Peoria, asked the DHS official, the bureau chief, as to when exactly they're going to see some of these policies enacted to start bringing down that SNAP error rate, and she responded.
Part of the complication is that guidance from the federal level has been very slow in coming down the pipes and has been very vague. These haven't been put into the rules that we often refer back to. We are awaiting guidance for some missing information, for instance, on the changes to immigrant eligibility. They had issued some guidance to us that had a big gap in the eligibility rules.
But we need to continue to have these discussions and receive updates and understand if there are policy tools that are needed to drive that error rate down to an acceptable level so that the taxpayers, as Senator DeWitt mentioned, aren't on the hook for a very important benefit, but it's a very expensive benefit. And if we can reduce the error rate as a state of Illinois, we'll be doing a good service for both of those groups.
If there's a lot of fraud going out, then that's taking away from those who need it most. As you can hear the debate going back and forth, something that JCAR is going to keep their eye on, I imagine, and they meet once a month and see if they continue moving forward with their oversight of how the SNAP program is being operated in the land of Lincoln. The case Viramontes versus Cook County is at the U.S. Supreme Court and has been put to conference for December 5th. This is just one of another case that could move forward to the U.S. Supreme Court soon, and that's the case Barnett v. Raoul, challenging Illinois' gun and magazine ban. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop with you each and every weekday morning, and we've been tracking the litigation against Illinois' gun and magazine ban since before it went into place, and even before that, there were bans regionally, like in Cook County. There was a ban on semi-automatic rifles and magazines over certain capacities, and an individual took that to court and went through the district courts, and then you have the state implementing its gun and magazine ban statewide. Viramontes included that in their challenge, goes to the appeals court. The appeals court sides with the state and the county, and now they've appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, and this is a separate case from the Southern District case, Barnett et al., which had 4 different plaintiffs groups and had a 4-day bench trial on the merits of the law, and a district court saying that the law was unconstitutional. The Barnett case, again separate from the Viramontes case, is still in the 7th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals with a hearing that happened on September 22nd, and here we are. Close to now 2 months fully after that hearing, and when are we going to get a ruling out of the 7th Circuit so we can anticipate fully whoever is the victor in that case, in the Barnett case, it's going to go to the U.S. Supreme Court. But before that, now we've got the U.S. Supreme Court's apparently going to consider the Viramontes case, and again, you can see the court docket at the U.S. Supreme Court's website. If you just search Viramontes v. Cook County, you will see that it was petitioned for writ on August 27th, shortly after the appeals court sided with the state in that case. You've also got, let me pull up here really quick, the actual ruling from the Viramontes case. You can see here the U.S. Supreme Court for the 7th Circuit saying that they brought this case with the Firearms Policy Coalition, Second Amendment Foundation, appealing the dismissal of their constitutional challenge to Cook County's assault weapons ban, relying on District of Columbia v. Heller and NYSERPA v. Bruin. They argue that the ordinance is facially invalid under the Second Amendment. Now, the appeals court, and this was back on June 2nd, when they made this ruling, they say that they addressed a similar challenge to the ordinance in a case that was before us on appeal with the denial of a preliminary injunction, and that was the Beavis case. By the way, the Beavis case, another regional gun ban challenge that also wrapped in the state gun ban, that stuck back at the district court after, on preliminary grounds, initial motions to halt the law as they deal with the merits. That made it all the way up and down to the judiciary, even going to the U.S. Supreme Court for consideration on preliminary grounds. But the Beavis case, again, separate from Viramontes, separate from Barnett, the Beavis case is stuck in the district court last I saw, and they're actually waiting for the outcome of other cases, including the Barnett case still in the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals, and the Viramontes case now possibly in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, as they have pushed that to conference. But the appeals court goes on to say that they reject the challenge based on the record the plaintiffs have compiled at that early stage of litigation. The challengers have failed to develop a record sufficient to justify a different result. We therefore affirm. Cook County's ordinance prohibits the possession, acquisition, and transfer of assault weapons. The law applies to a variety of firearms, including semi-automatic rifles capable of accepting large capacity magazines and possessing certain features. So it goes on to explain more. This is not a first encounter with Cook County's ban. In Beavis, they said that the consolidated appeals in cases challenging Illinois state and local weapons bans, and Bruin, including Cook County ordinances at issue, we held the plaintiffs have failed to show at the preliminary injunction stage that the covered firearms materially differ from machine guns and military grade weaponry. Again, this is some of the same stuff we saw from different appeals court cases. But this is what the Viramontes case is, right? It's the one that's now in front of the U.S. Supreme Court with the ongoing docket here showing that it's been distributed to conference for December 5th. What was the reply, right? Let's go ahead and check out the actual motion and the petition here for cert. All right, so this is from the plaintiffs in this case, and they spell out, the question presented, whether the Second and 14th Amendments guarantee the right to possess AR-15 platform and similar automatic rifles. The parties, and spells it out who they are, the disclosure statements, and other proceeding matters. Then you get to the table of contents. Always interesting to just kind of quickly glance at what the arguments are. And they spell out constitutional and statutory provisions. And they say that Cook County's weapons ban extends to the most popular rifle in America. The ban's effects on petitioners explained, and goes on for reasons for granting the petition. So they're asking the U.S. Supreme Court, lower courts need guidance in applying Heller and Bruin. The issues presented in the case critically important. The decisions below blesses a ban on the most popular rifle in America. Under the rationale of the decision below, the Second Amendment permits anything short of a complete ban on all firearms, and the decision below irreconcilably conflicts with Heller and Bruin. They say Heller requires finding that the banned rifles are arms within the meaning of the Second Amendment's plain text, and history demonstrates that only arms that are both dangerous and unusual may be banned. And they say that this case is a good vehicle to address this question. Now, this is where we're going to get into a little bit of interesting back and forth, because you've got the Viramontes case, which did not have a bench trial, right? There's a lot of evidence and documentation, but it didn't have that bench trial building a even more substantial record. That was done in the Barnett case, and the Barnett case is still in the Seventh Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals. And the Barnett case that consolidated 4 different plaintiffs groups in the Southern District on preliminary grounds, it as well went all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, where the U.S. Supreme Court said they're not going to take the case because it wasn't ripe yet. It then went all the way back to the district court. Last year they had a trial, and then you had the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals take up the district court's order that the ban was unconstitutional. So again, District Judge Stephen McGlynn in East St. Louis holding that 4-day bench trial, deciding that the law is unconstitutional. So now it's in the appeals court. The appeals courts held it for a bit. The plaintiffs had to say, hey, we're in limbo here. We have a judge order saying it's unconstitutional, but you guys are sitting on whether or not you are going to take the case and move forward with it. The appeals court then said, yes, they're going to have a hearing. They held the hearing, and then ultimately that's where we're at in the appeals court on the merits of the Barnett case. And it has a record that observers are acknowledging is a very strong record that they believe is exactly what the U.S. Supreme Court is looking for. So now we've got that still lingering in the Seventh Circuit. The Viramontes case may not have as strong of a record. That's what's being put forward to the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, I'm sure the U.S. Supreme Court, as they've done with other gun ban cases, they say, oh, we're not taking this one yet. We're not taking that one yet. Will they do that to the Viramontes case and say, hey, there's another case that's getting ready to get to us, the Barnett case, with a strong record addressing this question that the Seventh Circuit keeps bringing up about militaristic style firearms? They're too similar to military firearms. And if you recall that Barnett case, the 4-day bench trial, they had experts on both sides of the argument talking about the key differences between military firearms, not just from, having fully auto and burst and semi-auto, but also the metallurgy of the firearm is different from military grade versus the civilian metallurgy for consumer rifles that only do semi-automatic. But obviously a lot's been focused on the AR-15. Illinois' gun and magazine ban goes much further than the AR-15. It goes on to ban more than 170 different firearms beyond that too, when it comes to attachments and various different types of semi-automatic platforms, so including semi-automatic shotguns. and a variety of other firearms. So what's going to happen here? It'll be interesting to sit back and watch. And of course, December 5th is the conference for the U.S. Supreme Court, and we'll find out if they put that in the orders list to go ahead and take up the case or to deny taking up that case in a way to ultimately go about waiting for the Barnett case. So we'll be watching, of course, here with Illinois in Focus Daily, and get to thecentersquare.com. Sign up for the newsletter and wake up with us with those headlines in your inbox each and every day. And weekdays, be with us here for Illinois in Focus Daily.